Hey, everybody. It's the brand new year, and we're here with the Baseline crew, just like last year. Only so many more fun things happening this year, even over what we were doing last year. So we'll get right into it. We've got Sonal Patel, we got Anant Natarajan, we've got Samrat Kishore, we've got Manik Jain, Mark Haddle, of course, Andreas Freund, Jack Weiring, and Tuiten Yun T. Nice to see you all, and I hope I didn't butcher your name there.
It's fine. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Nice to see you too. So we'll get into a variety of things today. We're going to be talking about, let's see if we'll get some folks on chat. We'll make sure we have a good sound check here. I hope everybody can hear us okay. And we're going to be talking about several things. One is, this is the year of really getting into implementing baselining. That's what we're doing this year. We have a simple value proposition which people get. You can throw a rock in any direction in the enterprise, certainly, and find a need for coordinating multi-party activities and sharing information, or rather improving that people have the same information, and proving attributes of that information without risking the leak of the information itself. Companies today are more than ever needing to coordinate with each other. We know that the pandemic has caused a lot of that. It was already started. The supply chain disruptions are emblematic of why we need to do this more. And there's a lot of pressure, both from regulation and just general good accounting practices and good principles of operation, that we need now to spend the money, time, and effort to get our houses in order, not just our house in order, but our neighborhoods of companies in order. And to do that, you need either to trust everybody in your neighborhood that the data that you're sharing with them is not going to be leaked, or you need some way of coordinating without sharing the actual data. And that's what baselining is all about: coordination under zero knowledge, or coordination under secure multi-party workflow practices. That's what baselining is all about. And it's a pretty easy story to tell. And once you've told it, people want to do it. And then then they say, well, how do I do it? And even in our own community, up until right now, really, that's been a complicated answer. It's not complicated anymore. You need like 4 things. You need to be able to assign a certain kind of signature, digital signature, called an EDDSA curve. You need to be able to deposit and address and go find your fancy hashes, your proofs that come from that activity. You need access to a database like an SAP or Microsoft Dynamics or Oracle NetSuite. And you need, if you're going to be sending baselined messages, you need a messaging bus, and you like Kafka or NATS, and you need, finally, a way of generating zero knowledge circuits, like something like NARC. That's it. That's basically it. Andreas, did I miss anything? That's baselining. If you can implement those 5 things, and I'm pretty sure any competent IT department can, you can be baselining. Will products come out this year that make that automatic? Will companies, major platforms, start to deliver you baseline capability out of the box without you even having to think about it? Maybe this year, maybe next year, but you don't have to wait. It's pretty straightforward. So that's what we're talking about today, and I think that's that's the tee up I wanted to give for Monique to talk about the Battleship game that we constructed and is now out for you to use. And that's a great way of starting off your baseline journey. Monique, would you like to have talk about that? And then
Thanks,
Sonal, I
John.
think you've got some other things to talk about too.
Thank you so much for giving me this platform to discuss about the work that we did.
Uh-oh. Monique, can you hear us? Hey,
Sorry, could you please repeat? Like my network.
Murphy is in the room.
Issues, I think.
yeah, Monique, you cut out pretty bad there. I tell you what, while you're figuring out your connectivity issues, Sonal, would you like to take the second part of our show today?
Yeah, so we have Tui here with us who recently joined the Baseline community. She joined our core dev session as well as our standards call, and will also be joining our outreach team because coincidentally she has knowledge and experience related to Baseline that will help all of those different teams. So Tui, would you like to first introduce yourself?
Sure. So first of all, thank you for this openness of this community that I can join. And yeah, I'm actually just a master student right now at a German university focusing on blockchain and DLT. And my former background was in supply chain management. And throughout my experience, I was always, how to say, fascinated how difficult it is to exchange information between different participants of our supply chain. So even though there's a wish to collaborate and to work together, it's a little bit difficult. And also then when I was working in a startup where no information systems were set up, I was thinking, okay, maybe this is now the chance to make it more easy to make the right choices to integrate the different information systems, but that was also not possible. And now with the baseline approach, this is now my third attempt to see how information exchange is not possible. And I hope I can support the community here with my knowledge in supply chain management and DLT and blockchain. And I'm so excited for the journey ahead of us. And yeah, thank you for being here. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. So I'll first ask you what I recently asked you was, how did you come across Baseline? Because it's not Twitter, it's not in the normal ways that people come to us.
Yeah, so since I worked in my working experiences like in industrial companies like manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, and so I was interested. I have experience in the industrial field. Also, I'm an intern right now at a European blockchain research institute called Blockchain Europe here in Germany. And one of my first tasks was to get an overview of the newest technologies, newest trends in the blockchain space, especially focusing on enterprise use cases. So that is how the magic of the internet brought me to Baseline and to the Baseline protocol, and somehow now here. Yeah.
Super cool. Thank you. And so you joined one of our core dev meetings recently, and we looped you into blip number 1. I know there hasn't been a follow-up session since, but blip number 1 was pretty supply chain heavy, or sorry, it was supply chain heavy, but it's the example of not needing CCSM or zero knowledge in certain cases. And I sent you some of the resources for that. And Maron from SAP and Stefan from Unibright are working on that, and you'll be looped into future meetings. But what do you think so far about some of the documentation and work going on that you're seeing?
Yeah, so I hope, of course, that now the challenge is, of course, where to decide which of the processes, which of the informations need to be baselined. And this is also, I hope, where can I bring a little bit of knowledge with me and my colleagues. I hope also at the Blockchain Europe to define the exact, to go into detail and figure out what to do. But I think for the start, it's wonderful that there's something like that. And also regarding the customs processes, we at Blockchain Europe, there's also a working group also working on that area, customs and blockchain. So this would be, I think, a perfect match to go into detail and work also with partners in real life, like companies and governmental agencies who are really interested in that. And so I hope I can bring the efforts and activities of Baseline more to the awareness of the community in the companies and in that direction.
That's really cool.
Cool stuff.
I wonder if you could tell us more. You mentioning customs, and I think that's a really good case. It's not a case. It's not a use case. It's a topic, right? Customs, but inside of that topic are a lot of use cases, right, where people have problems and need to solve them. Where do you see that pattern of saying, I need to be able to prove attributes of information without sharing the actual information? Certainly one of the things that comes to mind, and we have some friends over in another part of Oasis that are working on certificate of original or certificate of origin in customs, right? There's a ex Ernst & Young executive that's running that project for Oasis elsewhere. And it always struck me that there are times when you need to be able to prove that you have the appropriate certificates without actually handing over the data of that certificate or some of the details about it. Is that a thing in your world, or is that barking up the wrong tree?
So from disclaimer first, I'm not an expert in custom processes, but one of the problems is like, of course, that many things are handled manually and a lot of things with paper. Regarding customs, I don't have a use case in mind right now, but that's because I haven't gotten into much detail, but I will in the next weeks then talk to the experts. But what I know maybe regarding, for example, collaborative manufacturing. So when one company or another company, they have like a free capacity, and they want to put it on a marketplace and say, hey, so if someone needs like to produce this or that, we have the capacity to do that, but no one wants to actually put the real numbers on, like for others to plug to know about it. But if I as a customer want to order, and I know this company would be able to produce this part I want, for me, it's not interesting how much capacity they have, like if they have 200, 300, whatever slots or so. But for me, it's just important. Can they do it? And if yes, then that's
they need to prove that they have enough without being more specific. Yeah, it sounds like a range proof to me. Andreas, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing about importing, customs organizations are pushing more and more towards forcing importers, or actually manufacturers, to register products with customs before they're even sold, such that customs can check whether products in a shipment actually have been registered or not. Right, so that's a key thing, and then the importer will have to attest to the fact that, oh yes, they have been registered, without necessarily having to reveal to anybody else who they, what these products are, because if you don't, then very likely your shipment of unregistered products will sit in dock for a little while.
Which is certainly happening a lot these days.
Irrespective of that fact is happening. It's like very, very true. If you want to see about supply chain issues, just ask people where they're putting their containers, the empty containers nowadays at Long Beach or
it's crazy.
LA port, which is absolutely insane.
There's a great documentary right now I found on YouTube. Maybe I'll find the link. But it had a lot of folks from Flexport on it. I really like Flexport. I'd love to see Flexport involved with baselining more. And that's a there's so much you could see evidence of just the cost of double checking. Right? It wasn't that if you could just flow things through, if you could just say this confirmed. But it's no, I got to make a phone call. No, I got to make sure, I got to send somebody an email, and it's just gumming everything up, right? If you can automate, I think that's why Gartner has automation right now as one of the top 2 or 3. I think. Don't quote me on that. I don't want to create fake news here, but I think it's in the top 2 or 3 items for 2022 and 23 is automation, workflow automation.
Yeah, the G8 has called for, or the within the G8, everybody has said that supply chain automation within 18 months is a must. I don't know about the 18 months, but I think that it's a must. I think everybody is in agreement with that.
Yeah. Are you seeing that kind of thing, and also? Where are places where it's just required to be in a state of consistency, right? Where you know that your information is their information. not necessarily with zero knowledge at all, just making sure that you have addressable signatures.
And so I know from the experience of a friend that who was working at an automotive factory in Southeast Asia, and they had a problem that because of the documentation, which was not correct, it was like I don't know, some part of the door, or like also in a car automotive factory. And he also said, yeah, because the papers were missing or not correctly documented, it was maybe part B, but then a slight variant of that was then documented. The container couldn't be released from the port, and they had to pay like the costs for renting the space, and they had to wait I think at least 6 weeks or some weeks for the right documentation then to be sent to them. So that was a really big problem regarding customs. Like if the documentation of the part is just slightly not in order, then yeah, it can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, I think this is, I don't think I understood this properly before. We were talking to Jack, some of your friends over at Unibright and Base Ledger, and you know, I have to say I'm coming around to their point of view of saying, you know, they're very pragmatic people, right? They're like, we just, you know, we have customers, we have real industrial clients, and they have, basically they need to be able to have a place to put the hashes of their signatures to confirm that they need an addressable place to put digital signatures that confirm consistency. And they're like, you know, we don't, you know, for a lot of stuff, we don't need zero knowledge for that. Is that still baselining? And I think on the edge it is. You know, if baselining is about, you know, high security, verified multi-party workflows. So I mean, would you say that that's like maybe, you know, the 80-20 rule, that, you know, 80% of the cases are just making sure that we have the same information, not necessarily having to prove attributes of that information?
Could you reformulate it? Question?
Yeah. So I mean, if I can just simply confirm to this to the next stage, you know, the freight forwarder, for example, that the shipper and the you know the certified agent have the same document at this point, and all they need to know is it's the same. So they're just watching a location on something like Base Ledger or some other what we call CCSM, consensus control state machine, that's, you know, publicly available. Whether it's permissioned or public is relevant, but they can say, yeah, okay, there's that proof, there's that hash, and that's what I expected to see, and it passes, boom, okay, I'm going to go. Now I can go on to the next stage.
So regarding, yeah, so if it is enough for them to just know, okay, we have the right information or the same information without not knowing what exactly it is, right?
Yeah, basically
so
timestamp signatures, right?
Yeah, and in which type of processes it would be, or at which stages during the custom process it would be okay to just, how to say, yeah, accept the fact that I know that it is right without actually knowing that it's right. I will look into that more in detail, but for now,
I guess, John, what you're asking is if you want to use, you know, some kind of a public ledger as a store of information, so everyone can verify, you know, signed, you know, information that is still visible. You don't necessarily need zero knowledge, but you want the knowledge to be verifiable by everyone, right?
Yeah, in the simplest case, right? And it's not a store of information, it's a store of stamps, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that stamps, the signatures can be, you know, traced back to the people who signed them, and, you know, it is on, you know, a tamper-resistant ledger, so as to speak.
I have to say that I find that appealing because of it, the simplicity of it, and, you know, in business, you got to start somewhere, and you got to start simple, and I found that an appealing argument. Andreas, would you agree?
It is not unappealing.
Well said.
Although one thing that you do run into is because it is deceptively simple and easy, and most of the audience that we're speaking with are used to complexity, and they're used to multi, you know, stack solutions and stuff. And so when you come in there and you know, really explain baseline, they sit there and go, "That's it?" You're like, "Yeah," and they're like, "What am I missing?" And I'm like, "You're not missing anything." So.
Yeah, if you're used to a square wheel, right, then a round wheel looks incomprehensible.
Like, I've already got this square one. It rolls.
It rolls with difficulty.
Angle on the attack.
Exactly. So it is a learning process because every product person who's ever launched a product knows that the most difficult thing to do is change people's habits.
Yeah. Hey, Sonal, I don't want to. Yeah, you called for questions, but and I think we supplied them. You want to take back the floor here? Sorry.
No, I think we wanted to have a pretty open discussion, see if anybody had any questions or comments for Tui, and just super excited to have you here. Anything else we want to cover?
Can I ask a question as well? So,
oh yeah, please do.
So one example, I suppose, Tui, is if you can put a bill of lading on, some kind of, let's say, Ethereum or something. And as the item, goes from port to port, etc., right? Then you add more signatures to that same bill of lading to reflect the progression of, the cargo, so as to speak, right? So in this case, again, you're using a blockchain as kind of a public ledger, as a bulletin board, verifiable bulletin board, visible to everyone. The progression of the cargo, the customs, the warehouse, and everyone along the way, as it progresses, you can verify it using the signatures to that same document, right? That's just a simple use case, but I guess that's similar to what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that use case would be very, very helpful actually, because sometimes they don't know where the container is, and they know it was shipped, but then no common understanding. So what's the progress? Like, how many days will it still need until it arrives? And especially for manufacturing companies, it is important to know when the parts will arrive to plan the production. So that would be really a good use case. To just know, okay, to have a common understanding of the progress of the shipment. And this, I think, would be for sure very beneficial. Yeah.
Again, no hidden information there, right? So no zero knowledge proof. It's open information, but the point is that it is, it has that visibility, to everyone.
This makes me then think about existing solutions, right? There are also many startups right now who are working on bringing visibility to international shipments. So
a lot of them though aren't. I notice a lot of them, and there's nothing wrong with this. A lot of them are trying to say, hey, we need better coordination. Everybody go into our portal and put your data in there, and now you're coordinated. Right. And God bless them if they can get that done, but that often compliance in that kind of regime can be tricky, right? Because, hey, wait a minute, I don't want to put my data in there, right? And I think this is where a standards-based approach, and Gartner also made this point in a recent, I think that at their end of the year thing is that workflow management, regardless of, I'm trying to get them to tease out multi-party workflow management versus just workflow management in general. It's like a $6 billion industry right now, moving to 50 billion by 2028, according to them. And they define it as the two parts. One is internal integrations, and effectively, and the other is external integrations. And with the external cross-platform integrations, that they say right up in their document, that it needs to be a standards-based approach. And I chuckled and said, well, gosh, that's what we're doing. It's a standards-based approach. Baselining is a standard. So, I think that's the other way, right? Is to say, well, whether you're trying to be a portal to do a thing or not, when you have to work across platforms, you're going to need a standard for that.
Yeah, exactly. So my thoughts were, so even though the startups are working on these solutions without maybe zero knowledge, without blockchain, but the question is how difficult it is and how long does it take? And and if with the zero knowledge proof or blockchain approach, it would reduce the time to market. I think that would be also something to consider for companies to maybe then choose that solution. And if it's a standard, yeah, if it's a standard, it's like they're not bound to or dependent on one on this the platform provider, right? That's also one thing.
Yeah.
I think it's worth reminding everybody. Sorry for interrupting you, John.
No, please.
I think it's worth reminding everyone that the primary benefit of consensus controlled state machines such as blockchains or distributed ledger technology is to provide a provable timestamp. That's it. Unless you're a token, right? It's like data integrity you can ensure through other means, right? Digital signature over a hash ensures that. But the provable timestamping is the major value add to any statement, any claim that you're making under zero knowledge or otherwise. Only, and I put the emphasis, only if you're dealing with tokenizations and you want to transfer monetary value from A to B, only then do you need the other features of a CCSM, such as double spend protection. So it's like that. It's really important to what are you using it for, what purpose, and be really focused on that and nothing else, because that simple focus simplifies your life tremendously.
And that's kind of what I got out of that call with the base ledger guys, right? Was that not to be it's not my job to be a shill for anybody, but we just did have that conversation. It did impress me. They just had some common sense arguments that made sense to me.
Once lawyers get involved, if you can point to that and here's a timestamp and it's provable, no one can. Then it's like end of story. That's what lawyers want to see.
Easy peasy. That should be the watchword for 2022 is easy peasy, or as my daughter calls it, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Baseline, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Dewey, thanks for that time. Anant, I want to give you a shout out. It seems to me that this is relevant to what you've been chasing, which is the PKI conversation. And Andres, I don't know if you've been following what it turns out that the PKI standards body is actually part of OASIS, or at least one of them. And PKI is a more traditional than DIDS way of getting certificates of identity. It's odd to think of it as old school because it used to not be old school. It used to be new school. But I wonder if this is an interesting conversation to help again. I still want to get to Monique if his internet has gotten stable.
Yes, it's better now.
It's better now. Okay, good.
Yeah.
You're in Toronto, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how would that work? I mean, so, Andres, the conjecture that Anant has been making, if I can try to parrot what I've been hearing, is that why go all the way to DIDS when we could right now lickety split form work groups off of PKI, and sort of get a leg up from there, and then encourage people to go to DID what I like to call modern digital identity as opposed to decentralized identity. What are your thoughts?
So two things, right? Number one is the portability argument, right? It's like
I'm not saying it's as good as DIDS, but can it get us going on a work group fast?
You can use X509s, yes, of course. You can, but those are credentials, right? So let's not confuse PKI and credentials, right? It's like that the provenance of a credential is proven through PKI. That doesn't change, right? It's the control factors that are there. Am I controlling, right, my keys, or am I relying on a third party for control, right? A certificate.
I can think of a lot of
authority.
workflows where the latter is good enough for now.
That is absolutely true. That's why in the standard, the usage of did is a should requirement, not a must requirement, right? So the key point why you actually want to get started with this, it will come out of the box with did element in BRI. So it's like that's
implementing it though. I mean, until a lot of companies are implementing it, it's going to be tricky.
Right. You can instantiate your element using an X509 and using the keys in the X509 for your signatures. Again, it's just a credential, and it's like it's which way you're onboarding. But the point is now you can have, because now you have a did, now you can start porting the credential to other solutions, right? You don't need the X509 anymore directly, because now with the did, now I can move from system A to system B through system C, different workflows, but I don't have to change things. Simplicity, remember?
Sure. But wouldn't it be cool to have, to get it, I'd call it almost like a hopscotch thing, right? You start with and I'm mindful that I'm stealing your thunder, so you feel free to interrupt me and jump in. But it strikes me that that'd be a pretty good blip, right? To say, hey, you know, let's have a little library package for getting a work group up fast with PKI. Hey, let's use that for the Battleship game.
And we're not telling anyone to use this or that, right? I mean, that will be decided by the use case. I mean, for instance, I mean, the use case that we just talked about, right? I mean, the bills of lading, you know, basically it's the same bill of lading, you know, with a, you know, some piece of cargo that goes through this, you know, through a set of ports or whatever. And each of these people, instead of signing a piece of paper and faxing it back and forth, you know, they affix a digital signature to that bill of lading, right? How do we know, you know, whose signature it is? You know, we rely on a PKI system to identify, you know, the, you know, public keys, you know, behind, you know, a blockchain wallet, right? So essentially that's, it's a, you know, production use case, and there is several use cases where we can build on, you know, existing, you know, PKI, right? Because that's also something that's behind billions of dollars of transactions per hour, right? As we speak, I mean, on the Web2 protocols, of course. So we're basically just trying to take a step ahead, and, you know, maybe in the future, you know, DIDs, you know, would be compatible with this, right? But, you know, we will converge at some time.
Right?
It's
you start with a PKI.
Step forward.
Yeah, so just path forward.
It's like so my and then that I'm shutting up because Monique, and there's a great use case where traditional PKI doesn't work, right? With a battleship, if you have public tournaments, how do you prove that across different tournaments, different stacks, that you're you, and that you actually won those tournaments without having to rely on are you all X509 compliant, right? It's like that's your point, and for that you need something that might use an X509 to bootstrap.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, is bootstrap, right? Bootstrapping.
You're using an X509 to bootstrap.
Yeah, we should have a PKI. We should have a PKI blip called PKI Bootstrap, I think. And
the
I'd be interested in that project.
Yeah, the X509 is not, you know, we can think of any number of certificates, right? I mean, following, you know, the same kind of approach, you know, certificates, in fact, that could, you know, kind of become, you know, kind of like a layer 2, 3 on some kind of blockchain PKI, right? I mean, X509 is just what's out there. It's what's implemented, what people are familiar with, and we are just trying to kind of take a step forward. And, you know, we will build on it, right? I mean, it's just that whole thing is like to, you know, build on what is being used, right? I mean, and just extrapolate that to new use cases to solve the real problem that we currently have with many of these business B2B use cases, right? Where identity is important, you know, actual real identities are important. And that was the whole idea, right? One other thing that I was thinking of as well, I mean, with regards to the reliance on,
yeah, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say one more thing, right? I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to put certs on, some kind of like a public ledger was to kind of, have some auditability of, these, so-called these centralized services of providing identity, right? So when you issue a certificate or a revocation list, I mean, you put that on a public ledger, like Ethereum, for instance, right? So that brings more auditability and responsibility, right?
Cool. Yeah, I'm interested in this. I'm glad you brought it up, and it's a great example of community members bringing up agendas. And I call these in a service economy, this would be called willpower services, right? There are people in a community that say we should do X, right, and that is a service to the community. Others will say and then other people will provide, okay, yeah, I want to do that services, but it all starts with somebody saying, hey, we ought to do something. And
hopefully other community projects use this as well, right? I mean, we enable other projects to use what we're building,
Yeah,
so.
It's one of the hardest things for a community, especially decentralized or distributed community, to do, or even a democratic one to do, is to, especially in a tall poppy kind of human-centered world, it's hard sometimes. Sometimes you'll see a whole community just kind of looking at each other going, well, what do we ought to do? And that's when the community's in trouble. It's always good to have, opinionated people in there that say, hey, you know what I think we ought to do is this. And we encourage that. So thank you. And lastly, one of the things we decided we wanted to do is build a battleship game. Monica, the floor is yours. I want to make sure you have the ability to share your screen. And you do now. Go ahead.
Thanks, John. And I would like to present the Battleship project that we just built up as a team. And on behalf of the whole team, I'm going to present what all things that we come up with. So we were discussing all throughout this discussion, what we are trying to achieve as part of the baselining. I mean, we need to prove what all the information is being shared across organizations, and without actually knowing what the exact information which is being shared, in terms of the zero knowledge. So there was this project that we started building on as part of the demo project, that any new dev who joins the baseline project, so they should be able to visualize what exactly the baselining project is doing. So when we started initially with the project, so we had different ideas, how to start the project, which all technologies we are going to use, and what all the things, what all the components that should comprise this particular project. So initially we had initially we were thinking we should implement using its NATs, which is the recommendation as a message provided by Baseline. But then we thought rather than having rather than trying the things which are already implemented, why not try something new which we can provide to the community to use as part of the coming projects. So then we thought of using Kafka as a message provider. So now the project is running on Kafka messaging queue. So what happens is when two different organizations, for the purpose of this particular demonstration, we restricted the scope to 2 organizations, but we have, the future scope is that we are going to, we can enhance the scope, and we can have multiple organizations taking part in that particular baselining game. And whenever these organizations join a particular work group, so they can then place their ships on the board, which is the basic battleship game. So whenever they place the ships on the board, so internally using the Kafka mechanism, where we'll be sharing the positions of those, the positions where the ships were placed, and then using the zero knowledge proofs coming in from the circuit coming in from NARC. So we are using NARC.js for that validation. So whatever is going to happen, the next step which is going to happen is whatever the positions were placed, the positions on which the ships were placed by the organizations or the players for that matter. So we are going to send that position to the NARC.js circuit, and we'll be validating if those positions, if any of that position is I mean, if any of that position is being taken by the other player, and which will mean that it was a hit. And if both the players have placed their ships on different positions, so it will mean that it was a miss. So the players can then take turns and they can keep continuing placing the ships. And what happens after that is, like, once we have the response coming in from NACGIO's circuit, so we'll be asking the users or the players or the organizations for that matter, like if the circuit has validated the positions well or not. And since it is like a zero knowledge proof game, and there can be possibilities like the players, they would be they wouldn't always be true to the game, so they can try to bluff and they can say like whatever is the output returned by the circuit, it's valid or not. So then we've introduced this cool feature wherein these organizations would be asked to like validate the outputs returned by NAC, if that is the good response, whether it was a hit or a miss. And then we have this another validation in place if the users are, if the users are true to the game or not. So in this way, we have implemented this whole game. And while we were implementing this game, so we had a little bit of challenges, like in terms of time differences. So like I'm in Canada, some other people there in US, and 2 people were in Europe. So we had this whole crunch of time management. So we had to like figure out a way to work around that, and we had to like organize meetings on a daily basis and come up with.
I loved how you guys did the pair programming online. I think that's got to be a standard. Sonal and I were talking about it yesterday. That as we do more grants, and this part of the things that one of the things we want to tell people today is that we will be raising new grant money, and that's underway right now. So we spent $100,000 last year. Actually, we spent $110,000. So that was exciting, and we'll be and so the base ledger team is getting a grant for this work, and now one of the things, I mean, we've shown the base ledger, or the not base ledger, sorry, the Battleship game before. Battleship team is getting the grant. But are you going to show it right now, or do you have it up, or because we have that elsewhere?
No, actually, I have just recently purchased a new laptop, so I don't have
don't worry about it.
Laptop, so it's on another laptop.
So maybe we can get the link up that has the where people can go. That's really what I wanted to do today, was make sure that people were aware. If you're a developer out there, we have this really nice example library that you could use. And Monique, if I'm not mistaken, one of the important things there is that you figured out how to use Kafka, which means you have the Kafka code in that package. So if anybody wanted to use Kafka and baselining, they could go and grab that code from your stuff right now.
Yes, so the whole bunch of code is in there as part of the code which is in the baseline repo. So the Kafka code is also part of that. So like the mechanism remains the same. Like all the organizations which are going to be part of the game, they are going to be joining the same Kafka stream, and whatever happens, like whatever messages are going to be exchanged, so it's going to be fetched out from the same Kafka stream.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'll have to let our friends over at Nats know that Kafka's coming for them. So, that's great. I mean, yeah, and everybody has their own preferences, whether it's Kafka or Nats or AMQP or something else. So it's nice to have more and more of these things up. And the point of this game, if I remember, it was that this is a really good case of kind of actually a relatively rare business situation where you need 2 parties to not know each other's information.
Yeah.
Right. You want, so in many cases in business, we want to know that we both, like Jack and I have the same information. We've got an invoice. I sent him an invoice. We need to prove to Anant that we have that invoice and maybe some attributes of that invoice, like I didn't overcharge Jack, so that Anant will do some other thing. Maybe he's the regulator or something. and we don't want to give the actual data, the details of that invoice to a non, but we want to prove that the rules were followed, right? So in this case, in that case, you have the two parties, the two players are fine seeing each other's boards, as it were. But in some cases, you even have two parties, like in the Battleship case really drives this home, that each party that wants to be able to coordinate without either of them even knowing each other's information, right?
Yeah, so that was the main challenge that we had. So, but luckily we tried like different approaches, and finally we were able to solve around that, like how we can just abstract that information from each other, I mean the other player, and how in real time we can send that information, I mean without actually sharing that information, but what are the positions or the coordinates of the ships where they have, I mean the coordinates where they have actually placed the ships. So that was the main trick that we had to solve.
That's awesome. Can we get that link? I want to put that link up.
Yeah, I posted in the chat.
Oh, cool. Where?
In the YouTube chat on the Baseline.
Oh, there you are. Oh,
YouTube.
You're way ahead of me, man. Okay, cool. I'm going to show that. Yeah. So very cool project, and I think it would be very nice to see now the next project, right? So one of the things you guys didn't finish doing deliberately, right? You can prove that that I hit or miss without me, looking over at your board, right?
Yeah.
If I call E4, you say miss, I know it's a miss, and we don't have to have some machine that we are using as a referee to prove that I missed, right?
Yeah, so for that we have just utilized the NARC circuit for the moment, but I think we have some future scope for that.
So developers out there, the library for that NARC circuit, that zero knowledge circuit, is also something you can look at and learn from, and say, oh, it's pretty interesting how they constructed a zero knowledge circuit to do that proof. And so that's another thing that you can get involved, you can look at. But now there's more work that you can do out there, right? So what we didn't do is allow you to prove that the whole battleship was sunk, right? That's, right? There's no proof for that. If it's a 3-peg battleship or a 5-peg battleship, you can't prove that the whole battleship was sunk yet. But there's a developer out there watching this show right now who could go into the blip repo and create a blip called "You Sank My Battleship" blip, and then add that circuit to the project, and now that they've enhanced that work. And
Can I give a little hint?
Yeah. No hints.
Recursive proofs. Sorry,
Yeah, exactly true. Yeah. Well, that's interesting, Andreas. So the first thing you're going to want to do as a developer who wants to get a grant for working on that extension of Battleship would be to call Andreas and see how he would do it. That's why he's here.
There's a couple of libraries out there. So if you want to do something good for the community, utilize that and make that more generally available as a to build recursive proofs in a baseline reference implementation.
I love that because the whole point of Battleship was to give people sort of a hello world. It's more than a hello world, but developers, something that mirrors real world scenario that they can use extensively to say, here's a simple implementation. It's got 4 components. I'm gonna use them. I'm gonna set this thing up. Oh, I've got to set up a work group. Okay, that's pretty easy. But I've got companies I'm gonna do this with now. Okay, I'm gonna add the company layer to that, but it's the same pattern, right? And we've given a very simple, hey, you're making an assertion. I am validating the assertion or not, right? And you could apply the Battleship game extensively to any kind of business case that has the same look and feel, right? But what it doesn't do yet is a recursive proof. So if somebody added that library to say, okay, well, here's a case where I need a purchase order following from an invoice, following from a master service agreement, and I need to prove that the purchase order is true to the master service agreement, even though it's downstream from the original proof by 3 steps. And that would be an example of a recursive proof. In fact, we use recursive proofs in the tree trunk, treetrunk.io. I'm going to totally shill that. Sorry. It's a company that we're spinning out of Consensus pretty soon. And everybody should go to ETH Denver to take a look at treetrunk.io. It's using the baseline techniques in the NFT game, but it uses recursive proofs.
Yeah. The next big thing.
The next big thing.
It's really simple. You just have to prove that you hit the ship, and then once you hit a certain number, then you're like,
hey, that'd be a good war game. Yeah, some military ought to use that for joint war games. Hey, let's use the battleship game from Baseline to coordinate our war game targeting.
Let me think about that for
I don't want to like broadcast my
not
telemetry
really.
on my F-16, but I want to prove that I hit your F-16.
Oh, it's just try to reach it. If it's not there anymore, you know exactly what happened.
Hey, we are getting to the top of the hour. We did start a little late. Sorry, everybody. We had a technical problem. But it's nice to see everyone. Any last words from anyone, Samrat?
Thanks, John. I'm good. I was really looking forward to the Battleship demo. And yeah, I will certainly look forward to it, Manik. So whenever you're ready, we are all game for it. And John, yeah, nice thought. I wish this becomes a rage and people start using Battleship for understanding ZK in general.
All right.
Yeah,
let's get
that
to
is
it,
indeed
everybody.
true.
Tweet, it's so nice to have you aboard, and we're excited to be working with you and all the people that are going to follow you into the core dev community and into baselining in general. We had a really great call the other day with a big system integration company big solutions company that, and none of the people there were blockchain people. They were all infosec, government, supply chain, and they're like, hey, yeah, we need to be able to coordinate without leaking data. How can you help us? How can we get baselined? It was a good call. So,
Nice.
all right.
Yeah. All right.
See everybody.
See you.
Super. Thank
See
you.
you.
All right. See
And
you guys.
Happy New Year again to everyone.
Happy New Year.
Merry New Year.
Merry New Year.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Baseline.